we don't really have a self. The self is a construction of our minds. There actually is nothing there. And that kind of emptiness, egolessness, is enlightenment. It's a beautiful feeling.
One of the best-selling authors of the last 20 years, Robert Greene.
If you're dealing with your own weaknesses and your own emptiness inside, you're going to be drawn to people who fill that up. People's perception of you can almost become how you perceive yourself if you're not careful.
Hey everyone, I've got some huge news to share with you. In the last 90 days, 79.4% of our audience came from viewers and listeners that are not subscribed to this channel. There's research that shows that if you want to create a habit, make it easy to access. By hitting the subscribe button, you're creating a habit of learning how to be happier, healthier, and more healed. This would also mean the absolute world to me and help us make better, bigger, brighter content for you and the world. Subscribe right now.
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the place you come to become happier, healthier, and more healed. Today's guest is one of your favorites, someone who's been on the show before. You absolutely loved our first episode together, and so I had to have him back. He's also one of my favorite authors, someone that I've been rereading recently, especially when I fell out of love with learning, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Today's guest is Robert Greene, the author of the New York Times bestsellers, The 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, The 33 Strategies of War, The 50th Law, Mastery, The Laws of Human Nature, and most recently of the Daily Laws. I am so excited to welcome back to the show, Robert Greene. Robert, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay. Thanks for that great introduction.
Of course, grateful to have you back in the seat. And as I was just saying to you offline, over Christmas, I spent last year touring. I was on stages. We did nearly 40 cities across 90 days. My book had come out. I was really pouring out externally. And whenever that happens to me, I always kind of, after that, get a feeling of, I need to grow again. I need to learn again. I need to nourish myself. And I really believe that last Christmas, the Daily Laws of Power became my daily read. And I have recommended it to so many people. My wife started reading it. My closest friends have started reading it. And it was just such a great book for anyone who's either stuck with reading, someone who's kind of like not sure what to read, someone who's trying to figure out their direction in life. The Daily Laws of Power is a great starting place, I'd say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I've always been a fan of your books. And you sent me this beautiful limited edition version, which I'm getting to show off on the show. But the 48 Laws, what a phenomenal book. So thank you for being such a big part of my learning journey.
For having me. You're a rock star, but what a tour you've been. I've never been on a tour like that. That sounds like fun.
It was fun. It was fun. We went to Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane.
Oh my God.
We went all over India. I went to Dubai. I went to
Whoa, I'm so
Amsterdam,
jealous.
Paris, Berlin. It was phenomenal. Like, it was amazing.
Would you consider yourself more of an extrovert or an introvert?
So that's a great question. And I'm going to let you define the two for me because you'll probably have some wisdom to share with us. I energize alone, but I enjoy connecting with small groups of specific people. So I assume I'm overall an introvert, but 99% of people would say, Jay, you're an extrovert. But if I was in a big group of people, I would find the one person who I share values with to have a deep conversation. I wouldn't be milling around introducing myself to everyone. So if that makes any sense.
But do you need to be alone? Do you feel...
I crave alone time a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot.
So you're a mix.
Yeah.
You're a mutt.
Ambivert, yeah.
Yeah.
If that's what it's called, yeah.
Ambivert.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I have so many questions for you, Robert, that I want to
Go
dive
ahead.
into. And I'm really coming to you with questions that I know a lot of my community and audience repeatedly ask. And I think you're specifically positioned to answer a lot of these. The first one I have is, one of the biggest things I get asked is, Jay, how do I deal with negative people? How do I deal with negative people in my family? How do I deal with negative people in my friend circle? How do I deal with negative people at work? In close, intimate circles, I feel a lot of people feel they're dealing with negativity.
Well, it all depends on the details, the kind of negative person you're dealing with. There are several kind of ways of looking at it, some kind of micro and some kind of much larger. The larger picture is we all have negative traits. We all have dark traits, right? And so you kind of, if you have this idea that it's just human beings are like this, it's like a flower or a rock or a tree, it has its nature. I just accept it. I accept people for who they are, and I deal with them on that level. I don't judge them, etc. Now, of course, when you're dealing with negative people, it can be very difficult because negative people like to stir up a lot of drama around them. And that's the kind of power that they get. They like the attention that they get from making people upset, from pulling on your emotions, right? So you have to have this kind of larger look at them where it's not about me, right? They're dealing with their own issues, their own problems. There's a history behind it. It could be their parents, it could be their family, it could be their spouse, their children, whatever. And they're venting it on me in this particular moment, but it's not personal. I tell people, don't take everything so personally, right? But then, so there are all these different levels, and it all really depends on the specifics because a lot of people come to me for advice. But a lot of times you're enmeshed with a negative person, like it's your boss, it's your spouse, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very difficult to do what I'm talking about, right? And so you have to try and get a little bit of distance from them. You have to be able to say to yourself, they're not me, right? They have their own problems. I'm separate from them. The sense of being separate from them is very liberating, right? So they have issues and they're trying to drag me into it and they're trying to drag me down. But I'm not them. I have my own life and I'm not going to get involved. Sometimes you need to have empathy, but sometimes you need to shut that off. And so the best thing in life, though, is that's why I say there's just so many angles to approach this from, is if they're like a deep narcissist, and that's probably the most common type of negative person you deal with in the world today, and we all have come across this. The power that you have is to recognize people like that before you get involved with them and to not get involved with them, right? And so they have signs, things that you can pick up in advance. People who are toxic, I don't know if we're going to say toxic and negative are the same here. They don't show it immediately. They're good at deceiving you. They can be very charming. They can be very dramatic. They pull you in with their great stories. Sometimes they're even charismatic. A lot of important CEOs in the world, people like Elon Musk, are raging narcissists. They appear very exciting and you want to get to know them. But you have to recognize that these are people that are probably going to use you, right? They don't see you as an individual. And the people you associate with, we're very, as humans, we're very open to the emotions of other people, right? And so the people you associate with have a huge role on who you are and the energy you have, your daily life, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have to be very, very careful who you let into your life, right? And God, Jay, I don't know. There's so many different angles to approach it from.
No, that's really thoughtful.
I tell people that don't judge people as far as who you're going to let into your life. Don't be deceived by the appearances. Don't judge people based on their intelligence, on their charm, on whether they're good or bad, etc. Judge them on their character, whether they have a weak or a strong character.
What are some of the signals, the signs we can look out for? Because I think what you just said is so true that we naturally get attracted to people's appearance, intelligence, charisma, access, because we haven't really been trained to view character.
Yeah.
So I remember when I lived in the monastery, the highest quality or character trait that was considered the epitome of internal emotional evolution was humility. And so when you met someone who was humble and you met someone who didn't have false ego they were considered of high character, and we were trained in order to understand that. But in the modern world, that isn't how the material world works. We're almost attracted to people who can come off arrogant and showboaty. And even if we sense we don't like that, we still believe that person has power. And so what are things that we have to look out for?
Well, also there are people who appear to be humble, but they're not really humble. Agreed. There's a lot of people now who feign humility because it's seen as a positive trait.
Yes.
So humans are born actors, and you have to kind of look behind the mask. So I tell people, I view it as strong or weak character. A strong character is a person who can take criticism, right? Who can work with other people, right? Who can deal with stressful situations, who can handle responsibility. And if there's something goes wrong, they take, I am to blame for it. They don't look at other people. There's somebody you can rely on. You lean on them, and there's something there to lean on. You can rely on them in situations. A weak character is somebody who cannot take criticism. That is probably the number one characteristic, the worst trait, I think, in people, and a definite trait of negativity, is somebody who can't take any kind of criticism, right? They're so defensive. So that means they can get away with anything. They can say anything they want, and there's just like a wall, a shell around them. Right? So the ability in a work situation, in a relationship, to take criticism and be able to use it constructively is an incredibly useful and powerful trait to me that reveals strong character. How people handle stress is a really good sign of their character. So in a work situation, people are good at faking it and pretending that they're very strong. But when it gets really stressful and there's a lot of pressure on it, the mask falls off and they reveal that they can't handle it. They're too weak. They're reacting to everything. They can't get out of the moment. They're so impatient, and fragile. And so the ability to handle stress shows that somebody has something strong inside of them, right? Mm-hmm. How they handle power, right? So when people are kind of climbing up the ladder in a group or in a job, they generally try and pretend like they're with the group. But once they have power, that all falls off, and they can become abusive, and they feel like they can get away with things that they couldn't get away with before. They treat people below them miserably, etc. So when people have power, how do they handle it? Are they responsible? Do they suddenly become somebody different, or do they maintain the character that they had beforehand, right? What kind of partners do they choose? Do they choose a spouse, a husband, a girlfriend, etc., somebody that they can push around, somebody that's inferior to them so that they can feel better about themselves? How do they look when they're playing like a game or they're in outdoor activities or something that has nothing to do with work? Are they so competitive they have to win at everything, even when it's like outside of that kind of environment, These are kind of traits that help me sort of judge a person's character.
Yeah, and these are often the things that we either ignore or we actually let them kind of fall by the wayside or don't pay enough attention to them because we think, oh no, but they're so smart and they're so this. And I wonder how much of that is also like, what does that say about us that we often get attracted to the wrong things within people? What does that say about us? Does that make us a strong or weak character?
I know that I tend to get involved with narcissistic people. It's a weakness of mine, right? And maybe it's because of my upbringing, and maybe it's because I feel a kind of emptiness inside of me, and that their charm and the attention that they pretend to give you is kind of enchanting or casts a spell on you and it draws you in. Yeah, so if you're dealing with your own weaknesses and your own emptiness inside, you're going to be drawn to people who fill that up. Or you're going to be drawn to causes and charismatic leaders that pretend to give you a purpose in your life because you don't have a purpose, but they have it for you, kind of thing. So a lot of it has to do, with ourselves, and we're attracted we're even attracted to negative people. And there are people who have patterns in their life where they deliberately choose the worst kind of person for them, right? And over and over and over again. because at least that makes them feel alive. At least the pain of it, gives them a sense of something's happened, something dramatic. And so they deliberately bring on that kind of pain. So it's